Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
What a pleasure it is to see you. And I have to say, in terms of so far, our service has been so full of things to be grateful for. The choir. I walked in this morning and I saw Betsy, and then I saw the rest of them, and I thought, did I not get the memo? And she said choir, and I went, oh, okay, I'm not part of the choir. I just need to wear a black skirt and a white blouse. And then Mark read the spiritual reading for today, and I thought, he just did my lesson. Then we had 2 songs from the choir, and I thought, what am I going to say that's new? We could all go downstairs and just start on the snacks. But that's not what they paid me to do this morning, so you do have to get a sermon. Well, I don't call it a sermon. I like to think of it as a lesson. Last week, for those of you that were here or tuned in, okay, I'm going to very carefully take this out and hold it under my chin and keep it there, because this big thing in front of my nose just really upsets me. Last week, if you were here or you were watching, you noticed that I said, in all things give praise and thanks. Well, later this week, I got an email from Sean, which I give praise and thanks. He said that I-75 was open. And you knew the many stories of my travels, and I would say travails in getting here. So this morning when I looked out the window, I thought, okay, but it didn't say anything about snow. Now what am I going to do? And what I would have to say, friends, is that there was no travail in traveling here this morning. It was beautiful. The roads were dry. The roads were safe. I was grateful. In all things, we give praise and thanks for every little thing, which means that the salt trucks got out there before I did. And that is this theme. Today, we are here for joy and celebration of gratitude. It's thanks living, as I described last week. And it's interesting that the second part of my title was getting ready for the happy, holy holidays. And last week we discussed that they're not always happy. Some of us don't actually think they're holy. Yeah, but they are holidays, and we choose to celebrate them. And then this brings us to the joy, thanksgiving, or thanks living, as I choose to say, brings us to the joy of Christmas, which is the season of love. I wrote one big word on my notes this morning, and it says oneness. Oneness. And the foundational principle of unity teaching is we live and move and have our being in the one power and the one presence that we know is the infinite loving God. That's it. We could all go and get our coats and go home now. But we need to find the ways in which to bring it into fruition. And for that, I would like to go back to the hymn that we sang this morning. I'm so grateful that Jackie chose that one. I've always loved this one. It's really old. It's a Netherlands folk song. It starts like this. We gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. Do we need to ask the Lord's blessing? If we live and move and have our being in the Lord, which is to say God, the one, do we need to ask? Because made in the image and likeness of God, as Genesis 1:26 has told us, we are that blessing. We are that blessing, and it is our task to be that blessing in the world. It's our task to be that blessing in the world. We can be called to no greater task than to be an example of God with skin on. When we hug each other, when we embrace one another, when we extend a hand to one another, when we help one another carry something or do something, we are God in action. That's what gratitude is about. It's being awake and aware that we are, each of us, an individualized expression of God, and that we are about the Father's business. So going back to that hymn again, we gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. We're asking ourselves, am I willing to be that blessing? And then it says, in silence and service, God's will is now done. God's words ever stressing. I always had a problem with that line. I never could figure out what it meant. God's words stressing? I got enough stress. I don't need your stress, God, okay? So just keep it for yourself and I'll deal with mine. What could that possibly mean? And then I decided it meant focus. Focus. Narrowing my focus to what is really important, to what is really significant. And so it goes on, words ever God's wonder expressing. That's what the focus is on, is the wonder of God within us, within each of us, is the focus, which we are stressing upon. Stressing in the sense that, how can he be more godlike? I'm already godlike. I am already an individualized expression of God. How can I make that more real? And so we look at the second verse. It says, within us abiding, our God ever guiding, ordain and maintain your true kingdom divine. Of course. It is the principle of divine order. All things work together for good, even if they look pretty cockeyed when we look at them at first. As from the beginning, the prize we are winning, O light, reveal the way, O love in us shine, the prize. Friends, the prize does not come at the end. I know many people who espouse spiritual beliefs that say, I'm going to get my reward. Jesus has a big reward for me. I just have to do all the right things. I know a dear, dear woman who once offered a really special cup of coffee from her son, refused it. And she said, no, I'm not having a cup of coffee. That's wrong. That's wrong. I've never had a cigarette. I've never had a drink. I've never danced. I've never played cards. I've never had a cup of coffee. No. And I thought, oh dear soul, I am so sad for you that some of the things which are offered us as pleasures in our life are deemed to be sinful. I remember when I first started going to a Unity Church, this was in Fairfax, Virginia, which is one of the northern suburbs of Washington, D.C. And after several weeks, I said to my neighbor who had taken me, I said, when is the minister going to give a sermon on sin? And she looked at me, she said, oh, we don't talk about that here. And I thought, yes, okay. In Unity, we call it missing the mark. I aimed for being a perfect, individualized expression of God. That was my intention. I believe that the power and the presence of God within me enables me to do that. But my humanity showed forth, and I slipped a little bit. It's like the story I told in class the other day when I said when somebody really passed me flying by, it's one of those moments when you think, where is there a cup when you need one? Which was hardly a spiritual thought. Okay, that was the human part. Then the spiritual part kicked in, and I thought, I don't know why he's speeding. And then I said, may he arrive at his destination safely, and may all be in divine order. That's it, folks. That's the two sides of us. I had an intention. My humanity, which is, how dare you cut me off on the highway, slipped in, and then I was able to return. And I hope I was able to forgive myself for missing the mark. Because I do believe that one of Unity's most profound teachings is its concept of forgiveness. I give up error thought. I give up thoughts of lack and limitation and of being a sinful creature for the knowledge that I am an individualized expression of God. We look at one another and we say, I behold the Christ in you. Okay, usually we don't do that, except maybe on Easter Sunday when we've been encouraged to do that. But we could anytime we saw somebody, as I watched you all walking in. And I'm so grateful for the person who moved the plants, the forest through which last week I couldn't see anybody. And it's now in another location. And I'm so grateful because as I saw you walking in, I went, oh, there's so-and-so. Oh, I haven't seen her for a while. Oh, I wonder how the chicken is. She knows who I am. I wonder how the chicken is because the chicken didn't come to the last pet blessing. The joy we take, friends, in seeing our congregation. And once again, we come to sing praises with glad alleluias and know that in giving our blessing shall be. Let this congregation proclaim new creation. In spirit we are one. In Christ we are free. That is the message of Thanksgiving. The real message of Thanksgiving isn't about the turkey. It isn't about what we're going to eat. It isn't about who we're going to have over. It is the joy of the season. When Reverend Ross comes back next week, she will begin the Advent series. I've always liked to break that word up, the adventure. In other words, using the AD, which is a Latin prefix, which means to or toward, taking part of the word vent and making it a venture. The venture within over the next 4 weeks that brings us to the culmination of Christmas, which isn't about the tree. And in case you turned on the TV this morning to find out where the snow was and how deep it was, you didn't find that out, but you did find out that Christmas trees are going to be way more expensive than they were last year. I thought, well, so much for that. Will there be a Christmas tree? Yes. Last year, there weren't enough Christmas trees. This year, there are Christmas trees. Okay, so they're going to be a little more expensive. So instead of getting an 8 or a 9 foot, maybe you're only going to get a little 6 foot because it's going to be 10 or 15 bucks cheaper. Or maybe you're going to go out into the woods with a little pair of trimming shears and you're going to take a little branch of some tree. I mean, it is public land, so one little branch of one tree, which you're going to stick in a pot or a vase, and put 1 or 2 little baubles on it. In other words, when it says we proclaim a new creation, what these holidays are asking us to do is to see life differently, to see it full of possibility, instead of saying, oh dear, we can't have a Christmas tree this year, or oh dear, turkey went up 40 cents a pound. Those are thoughts of limitation. They are not thoughts of gratitude and celebration. I found a very interesting story, which when I first read it, it just touched my heart. And then I realized that it was preachable material. This is from a Sunday New York Times several weeks ago. It's in the section that's called the Metropolitan Diary. And it's entitled The Scream. Don't be worried, it's not scary. The Scream, so I'll give you the idea, is a famous picture by Edvard Munch. It's a person standing on a road with their mouth open. And it's known as the Scream. It is open to millions of interpretations. But here's something that happened. Dear diary. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving in 2012, and my mother, who was 89 at the time, and I were on our way to the Museum of Modern Art to view Edvard Munch's The Scream. As it turned out, she was correct in her feeling that this trip to the Museum of Modern Art might be her last of many. We took the train into the city and rode the subway before walking the last few blocks. It was a struggle for her, but she wouldn't let me hail a cab. After arriving at the museum, we bought tickets, checked our coats, and proceeded up several escalators to the large gallery where Munch's masterpiece was on display. Alas, even as big as the gallery is, it was overflowing with people. There was no way I was going to be able to navigate my frail, fragile mother through the elbow-to-elbow crowd. Mom, I whispered, disappointed, it looks like it's not just her day. When we were turning to leave without saying a word to us, a museum guard who was standing nearby sprang into action. Pardon me, he said in a booming voice, gently but firmly parting the crowd. Pardon me, please, pardon me, please, pardon me, please. He continued this way until he had created a path and was standing just 2 feet from this famous painting. Everyone watched him expectantly. He turned, found my mother with his eyes, and silently waved her forward. I steadied her until we were right in front of the screen. We lingered there for over a minute, taking in all the inimitable painting had to offer before thanking the guard and the crowd, making our way out. What do we see? We see an elderly parent in the care, this was written, by the way, by Garrett Andrews, in the care of an adult son, fulfilling a desire for which his mother will be grateful. She was a woman of culture, refinement, interested in art, or maybe she just wanted to get out of the house. But here's the important part. It's the guard who was watching, observing, fully present to the God moment that was in that room. And what did he do? He exercised his authority. I mean, we see somebody with a badge and a uniform, and they go, pardon me. Oh, stand to attention. I'm going to see what's going to happen. And he created a path forward. In other words, he opened the door to possibility for the joy that this woman would experience by seeing this. It struck me so strongly that I absolutely had to tear it out of the paper and put it up on the refrigerator. And I thought, I don't know when, but it's going to be in a lesson. So what do we find here, friends? How do we make ourselves present to what is before us? to what is given to us to bring forth. We ask the Lord's blessing to be in God's service. Now, how do we do that? Well, I thought one of our teaching principles is, of course, our 12 powers, our potentialities, our possibilities, our capacities, our capabilities. And I thought, which ones? Well, the one that I looked at first was, of course, the guard. That impressed me. I have actually had some very interesting experiences with museum guards. I once had a private discussion with a museum guard in the British Library reading room, where he pointed out to me where Karl Marx had sat, where several other famous people had sat when they were studying. What was interesting about this was this man was of South Asian descent. I don't know whether he was Pakistani or Indian, but he was definitely not a white Anglo-Saxon British person. And I suspect that no one else ever spoke to him. But you all know me, so it doesn't come as a surprise that I engaged him in conversation. And what I got was a gift of a history lesson. On another occasion, and I've been fortunate to travel a lot, I was in a museum in Berlin. And my German, though not superb, was adequate enough. And I said to the guard, and what did they do with the art during World War II? Touchy question. Very touchy question. And though I said my German is not superb and I do have a nice accent, it was very clear that I was an American and not a German. And what he said to me was, most of it was taken down and put into caves in mountains and saved. And I thought, good. Though the intent of the rest of that whole horrible war was evil, something good happened. The art which lifts us, which offers us a different perspective, was saved. We had the opportunity to see it again. This is what I mean by being awake and aware. What can I do here? How can I be grateful for what I am given, for the life that I lead, the land that I live in? Did you all have heat on this morning? Yes. When you opened the faucet, did you have hot water? Yes. When you got in the garage and turned on the engine, did it turn over? Yes. Okay. Lesson number 1, which I learned the hard way. If it's going to be this temperature for about another week, make sure you do that every other day, folks, or you'll be calling AAA because your battery's going to die. Okay. That was the practical information for today. I looked at this and I thought, what powers could we engage? The first one is faith. Yes, faith. Because, friends, if we do not believe that we are one in the presence of God and that there is a divine order unfolding, no matter how cockamamie, bollocksed up, screwed up the world looks in that given moment, we're lost. It is our willingness to believe that God is, the divine order unfolds, and we are part of it. So the first one is faith. The second one is understanding. I am so fond of Mr. Fillmore. Yes, I know on several occasions I have said, and I never thought these words would come out of my mouth, I am a Fillmore fundamentalist. And I am. Okay, I'm not so crazy about the second word, but I am a Fillmore fundamentalist because the foundation, the fundamentals of our spiritual program is that God stands under all that is. You see how faith and understanding interact, how they work together. As we believe, so do we recognize, so do we begin to see the potential for our own action. The third quality that I thought of, for which we should be grateful, and we can be, is willingness. Willingness. We know from Scripture, when the question is asked, whom shall I send? The answer is, Hineni. Here I am, Lord, send me. How many of us are willing to do that? How many of us are willing to do that? I had an extraordinary experience on Election Day. For the very first time in my life, I was an election inspector. And I got up at 4:00 in the morning because I had to be at the polling place at 6 a.m. And I stayed there for the next 14 and a half hours. Yes, we did get potty breaks, but I, because I lived so close, I got 20 minutes to run home, kiss my cat and feed him and come back. Other people were there the entire time. It was so exciting. It was one of the most exhilarating days of my life. And at shortly before 6 a.m., when the chairman of our team said, I will now administer the oath, and we all raised our right hand, and she started to say, repeat after me, I do solemnly swear to protect and support the Constitution of the United States. My breath caught in my chest. And when we finished the entire oath and said, so help me God, it was a moment that I'll never forget. I was a part of history. I took the same oath that men and women have taken and then died to fulfill that oath, that Congress people take, that people elected to public office take. Friends, it was so wonderful. And you know what I did? It was so menial, M-E-N-I-A-L. You remember your paper ballot has a little perforated strip along the top? Remember the little piece of square paper that you get that has your application on it? Guess who tore off 558 strips of perforated paper? Oh my God, my neck and my shoulders were so sore by the time I got home. But I was so thrilled. And somehow, on a couple of occasions, I intuited that the young person before me was a first-time voter. Or perhaps it was the voice of spirit that simply spoke. And I would say, is this your first time voting? And they would say, yes. And I would look up the line of my table and I'd say, first time voter, and we would applaud. That first time voter would light up with the appreciation and recognition of their being part of our greater community and fulfilling not just their right, but their obligation. It was wonderful. Okay, are you going to do that? Probably not. Are you going to go downtown someday and be in a demonstration? Are you going to? No one is asking us to do anything like that. But what spirit within us is asking to do is to be awake and aware to the potential of who we are as living expressions of the Christ. So that when the question is asked, whom shall I send? Then the final word that I came up with will motivate us, and that is love. Because the thanks living and the gratitude cultivation through November and this holiday we celebrate this week prepares our hearts and souls for the Christmas season, the foundation of which is love. Love was expressed in a new and powerful way through the message of Jesus, whose birthday we celebrate. Do we call them happy holidays? Only if you choose. But you have the power to make them happy. With trees, without trees, with turkey, without turkey, with cards, without cards, it doesn't matter. Are they holy? They are holy to the degree that we infuse them with holiness, recognizing the power they have to transform our lives. And are they holidays? Yes, we get a day off. Well, some of us do, some of us don't. It depends. But the holiday is within our heart. Friends, this week as you sit down at your tables, together or alone, it doesn't matter. What I ask you to do is be grateful. Be grateful for what is, knowing that it is God made manifest. It will be my pleasure next month to be here in the pulpit live on the 18th of December, which means I get to see you the Sunday before Christmas. Now, Reverend Rosalind will have facilitated the candle lighting service the Sunday before that. But mine will be just before the holiday. I am looking forward to that. So I close by wishing you a happy Thanksgiving. However you spend it, and an inner adventure that brings you to the full awareness of who you are, an individualized expression of God. Thank you.